right, so we left off talking about classical conditioning. We talked about Watson. Watson did classical conditioning with little Albert because he was conditioning a fear. Remember, he took the loud sound, which caused fear in little Albert, and he paired it with a rat. So now, when the loud sound was made, which is your unconditioned stimulus because it made something happen, it caused an unconditioned response. So now the neutral stimulus, which is the conditioned stimulus, was paired, and now the conditioned stimulus of the rat will now cause fear. So now it's a conditioned response. But what Watson also saw is that when that started happening, little Albert, when the rat would come out, would start pulling away from the rat. So he saw that other behaviors were also being conditioned. It wasn't just classical conditioning. Little Albert was making voluntary moves, okay? So behaviorism was born. Edward Thorndike, he found the law of effect. Basically what that means is, Thorndike's law of effect, is that if there's a reward, the response is strengthened. If there's a punishment, the response is stamped out, so it lessens. Organisms learn to avoid behaviors that would result in response. Now, who took it a huge step further was B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner's reinforcement, okay? Skinner taught pigeons to engage in operant behavior. Operant behavior is behavior that operates or manipulates the environment, okay? So operant conditioning is when the organism learns to engage in behaviors that is reinforced. So voluntary responses are required for this type of conditioning. So for example, when the light would turn on and the rat would press a lever, the rat would get food. But if the light was not on and the rat pressed the lever, it wouldn't get anything. So the rat eventually would only press the lever when the light would come on. It had been trained to press the lever when the light came on because then the rat would receive food. So Skinner focused on measurable behaviors. He used this box, which is lovingly called a Skinner box, although he prefers to be called an operant chamber, but we call it a Skinner box in the field. This permitted the introduction and removal of experimental conditions, and it provides observable effects on laboratory animals. So we use pigeons and also rats in this box, and various things, like for example, at one point they trained a pigeon to, when they saw the picture turn, because its letters are just pictures, but when the pigeon would see this shape, it would do a turn and it would get a treat. Now how they did that was they put this picture of the word turn up, and the pigeon did all kind of behaviors until finally when it did a turn, they dropped a food pellet. So eventually it associated, when I see the word turn, I'm going to get a food pellet. If I do that action, when I see this word, I'll get a food pellet. Now, is the pigeon reading? No. It just learned to associate that word turn, the picture turn, with doing the action, to which then it would get a treat. So Skinner's operant conditioning. Now with operant conditioning, Skinner is perhaps the biggest name in behavioral conditioning. If you do anything with behavioral conditioning, with training dogs, training kids even, we see operant conditioning literally daily. So you have your positive reinforcers, your negative reinforcers, your positive punishments, and your negative punishments. But before we get into that, let me tell you this really quickly. Reinforcers, a reinforcer always increases behavior, okay? Okay, and a reinforcer always increases behavior. So if you see a reinforcer, you know that if you see a behavior increasing, you know it's a reinforcer. Punishment, on the other hand, always decreases a behavior, okay? So punishment always decreases the behavior. So when we look at punishments and reinforcements, if somebody says to you, my daughter keeps screaming every time we go into the grocery store because she wants a candy bar, so eventually I give it to her because I'm so embarrassed that she's screaming. Well, guess what? Her behavior of screaming is increasing. It's not a behavior we want, but it's increasing. So if we break that down, we can see that she's increasing her behavior of screaming because she's being given something, that candy bar. And she knows if she just wears her mom down, she'll get that candy bar. The mother is being negatively reinforced because she's increasing her behavior of giving that candy bar to make the kid stop screaming. So the kid is actually trained the parent. So it's not always behaviors that we want that we train into people doing. Sometimes we train behaviors that we don't want them to do. Punishment always decreases behavior. Reinforcer always increases. So when you're answering the questions, don't think good or bad. Think, is it increasing or decreasing behavior? So positive and negative, this does not mean good and bad. This just means with positive, the sign positive, you're adding something, okay? You're adding something to get a behavior to either reduce or to increase. With negative, you're taking something away or avoiding something, okay? Taking something away or avoiding something. So positive reinforcer, a reinforcer when presented increases the frequency of an operant behavior. So an example of this would be maybe Bob gets, writing with the mouse, gets $5 a week if he takes out the trash. Okay, so we are wanting to, Bob gets $5 a week if he takes out the trash. So we are giving him something, $5 a week, to increase his behavior of taking out the trash. So positive reinforcement, okay? Negative reinforcement. Bob always puts his seatbelt on to avoid the buzzer sound. Okay, so with that, he is increasing his behavior to avoid the buzzer sound. So something's being taken away. Okay. All right. So with punishment, positive punishment, this is application of an adverse stimulus. So for example, Bob gets 5 minutes timeout so he stops STOPS hitting. Sorry, I'm writing with the mouse, guys. All right. So Bob gets 5-minute timeout so he stops hitting, okay? We're wanting to decrease the behavior of his hitting by adding something. We've added timeout to decrease behavior, okay? All right. So negative punishment, this is removal of something pleasant. So with negative punishment, this could be Jane lost her car. I'm using Jane because my daughter, this actually happened with my daughter, actually. She lost her car because getting speeding tickets. She wasn't getting speeding tickets, but she had gotten in 2 accidents. Getting tickets. Okay, so we took away the car, Okay, we took away the car to reduce this getting the speeding tickets. You can't get the speeding tickets if you get the car. Now, here's the thing about punishment. Punishment only works if you have a reinforcer and you stick to it. So if I take away Jane's car, you got speeding tickets, so I'm taking your car away. But then the next day I say, okay, fine, take your car, you got to go to school. It did nothing, okay? Another example is I took away my daughter's phone because she kicked her sister. And I said, I'm taking your phone away to reduce the kicking of your sister. I removed something pleasant. Now, I kept that phone for 3 days. And if she had any fighting with her sister over those 3 days, she could not get her phone back. Okay. So I wanted to increase her positive behavior with her sister. So it being nice, being pleasant. So you have to have that backup reinforcer, and you have to stick to the plan. So for example, Bob gets $5 a week when he takes out the trash. If you stop giving Bob that $5 a week, he will stop taking out the trash. My daughter, for example, she's already earned $30. Hold on just a second. She's already earned $30 from babysitting. All right. So if I don't give that $30 to my daughter, she will eventually be like, I'm not babysitting anymore. I'm not getting my money. Okay. So I want to make sure to give her that money. So she will continue to say, okay, I'll keep an eye on Aaron for you to go ahead and get things started, kind of thing. All right. And so same with negative reinforcers. If the seatbelt buzzer breaks, then you may see somebody, they stop kind of putting their seatbelt on because they're like, oh, well, the buzzer's not going off. There's no point for me to put the seatbelt on. That reinforcer's not there anymore. You're not needing to avoid the buzzer anymore. So when this happens, and this is just a chart you guys can look at. It's kind of a handy dandy chart if you like it. But when that happens, that's called extinction. Extinction results from repeated performance of behavior without reinforcement. People can reinforce themselves for desired behavior by telling themselves they did a good job or having a reward set up for themselves, something like that. But if the reinforcer's not there, it will go into extinction. One of the things that with couples, it's very interesting, is in the beginning of a couple's relationship, you're sending each other sweet texts, you're doing stuff like that. It's all like very like, ooh la la. So with couples, like I was saying with couples, in the beginning, you're getting text messages, you're sending each other funny jokes. When the person gets home, you're like, hey, I'm so happy to see you. Let's, hang out together. You're spending time together. As you develop into the relationship, you stop spending the time together. You stop sending, because you're together, so you stop sending those fun texts to each other. Or now it's instead of, how was your day at work, honey? It's, you didn't take the trash out. That's the first thing they hear. So that behavior of that once was reinforced, the being sweet to each other, starts to extinguish because there's no more reciprocation. So you start to see dysfunction in the relationship because the reinforcers aren't there anymore. The things that made you kind of go, ooh, I'm so happy to be with you, they're not there anymore. So, example, my husband used to send me lots of texts that would make me laugh or giggle. And literally within a month, 2 months after we were married, he stopped sending them to me. And I was like, I'm missing the text you used to send me. And he was like, oh, but I live in the house with you now. And I'm like, yeah, but that was something that made me really happy. So he still to this day still does it. So I don't want to extinguish that because that makes me love him a little bit more, or maintain my love. I don't want it to extinguish. All right. Spontaneous recovery. This is adaptive in operant and classical conditioning. We see that in both. But this is when reinforcers are available after time elapses. Once extinction has happened, a great example of this is a professor of mine had taught his roommate's dog to burp and the dog would run up to him and the dog belched. And he said, good dog, and gave him a treat. And the dog belched again. He said, good dog, gave him a treat. And this is not something that the owner was happy about because the owner came home and his big Doberman ran up to him, went, bah, just belched right at him. And Dr. Sappington just kind of was like, like, and the roommate was like, what have you done to my dog? I mean, that's what happens when you live with, a behaviorist. And so the owner, when the dog would belch, the owner would just turn his back. He wouldn't say good dog. He wouldn't pet him or anything. So because the reinforcer went away, the dog stopped the belching. But one day randomly, the dog kind of ran in and just belched at him and looked at him like, am I going to get reinforced? And he laughed. And so all of a sudden the dog started doing the behavior again. So you have to be careful with, especially with behaviors that you're wanting to extinguish. So if you have like a child that's not behaving in class, maybe because they like to get people to laugh. So the behavior may extinguish, but then if they do something silly and somebody laughs, you may see kind of the behavior spontaneously recover. It may come back. All right, so a discriminative stimulus, when we talk about operant conditioning, a discriminative stimulus is a stimulus that indicates whether a behavior will be reinforced. A behavior that is not reinforced tends to extinguish. So for example, we only answer the telephone if it rings. I don't pick up my telephone every 2 minutes and go, hello? Oh, nobody's there. Hello? Oh, nobody's there. You know, that's not something that I do, okay? So I only pick it up if it's actually ringing, like if somebody calls. Another way to look at this too is if you want a little bit of money, all right? You need a little bit of money, so you call Auntie, okay? And you say, Auntie, I really need some money. Can I get a little money? And Auntie's like, sure, baby, I can give you $5. And you're like, hey, thanks, Auntie. That's great. Appreciate the money, right? Let's say you call, this is Auntie Meg. You call Auntie Meg and she's like, sure, baby, here's $5. Let's say you call your Auntie Jan, and she's like, why do you need money? What do you need money for? If you talk to your mom, why isn't your mom giving you any money? What's the reason why you're not getting any money? I don't know. I got to find out what you're going to do with this money. What are you going to be doing? Okay, you're not going to call Auntie Jan when you need some money, right? Because you know that Auntie Meg's going to give you a 5. Maybe dad will, mom will, maybe a cousin will, whatever. We know who to call. This morning, for example, I was looking at my phone because I needed a ride. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know this person's going to be asleep. I know this person's going to be asleep. This person's probably in a meeting. And it was only 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was like, oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. And I could call Uber, but there's no Ubers out. So finally I was like, okay, I'm just going to call Missy. Cause I know that Missy, my friend Missy, will get in the car and she will come get me. And I'll hook her up with some coffee, to thank her. But I know that she will help me out. So I'm very careful about calling out favors. But, I know that she will help me out if I need help. So that's your discriminative stimulus. When you know something is going, that thing is going to give you the reinforcer. That stimuli that you do, you will be reinforced for, and you're more likely to do that. All right, so primary and secondary reinforcers. A primary reinforcer, okay, is an unlearned reinforcer whose effectiveness is based on the biological makeup of the organism and not learned. Okay, this is things like food, water, okay, food, water, shelter, okay, the right temperature, no pain, so the absence of pain. I'm not even going to try to write the word absence with my mouse, but no pain, not having pain. Then you have your secondary reinforcers. These are stimulus that gains reinforcement value through association with established reinforcers. So the biggest one here is going to be money, okay? But it's also things like maybe even candy, money, praise, affiliation. It's hard to write O's and I's. All right, affiliation. So affiliation or having others around. This is a big one. So here maybe praise from somebody. Okay, these are things that are secondary reinforcers because they're conditioned. Money can buy you food, water, shelter, and help you avoid pain. Praise is your affiliation that you're getting. So these are things that are tied to primary reinforcers. The closer they are to a primary reinforcer, the stronger the reinforcer. So now at tokens, this is secondary reinforcers that can be traded for rewards. So token prizes, some schools do things like school bucks Or like, oh, your coffee, like, your coffee card. After you get so many stamps, you get a free coffee. Starbucks does like a Starbucks points. Like if you get so many Starbucks points, you get a free cup of coffee. So in fact, at Ollie's, sometimes they'll have Starbucks coffee at Ollie's. It's on really huge discount. And so it's like you can buy a $5 bag of Starbucks coffee at Ollie's, but it's got 5,000 points on it, or 2,000 points on it. And 2,000 points is actually like 3 cups of coffee. So from Starbucks. Like, so if you hit Ollie's and you check out the aisles and you find, or like one of the discount stores, and you find a discounted bag of Starbucks coffee for $5, well, you've just gotten yourself coffee you can make at home for $5, but you also can get yourself 3 or 4 cups of coffee out of it. So that's one good way to get yourself some free coffee. All right, so token economy, tokens work very, very well if you do them properly. The only problem with tokens, like I said before, is that with my daughter, when she was in 3rd grade, we did screen tickets, and she would earn tickets to be able to have time for her screens. And so we were very, very busy one night. We'd had an emergency, and so she did not have any screen tickets. But we went ahead and gave her the tablet because we were like, we got to take care of business. Let's just give her the tablet because we got to do this. And then it was like everything went downhill. Like the next day she had a really hard day. And so she came home. She was like, can I watch my tablet? And we were like, no, you didn't earn any tickets today. She was like, well, yeah, but I didn't earn any tickets yesterday. And I was like, oh, so you really have to stick with it. You have to be very, very careful with this kind of economy because you want to stick very closely to the rules of earning the tickets or the tokens. Also, it's bad to take them away. So one of the things about it is if you're earning tickets to a bigger reward, some people will say, okay, you've earned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tickets, but you didn't behave today, so I took 2 tickets away. That makes kids give up. They're like, well, whatever, if I can just lose them. But if you do, like, you have to have 100 tickets to be able to have screens on the weekend, to be able to play games on the weekends. And you're giving out those tickets for legitimate reasons. Like, let's say, for example, the kid comes home, hangs their jacket up, puts their backpack away, and then starts their homework. I mean, I would run out there and be like, hey, you know what? I'm so proud of you. Look at all these things you did. Here's 5 tickets. Great job. Like, I am very impressed you got your homework started without me telling you. Thank you so much. Here's 5 tickets. And once they earn the tickets, they don't lose the tickets. But they have to get to that 100 tickets. And they don't get to that 100 tickets, then you say, I'm sorry, it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock, it's the cutoff. You only have, 45 tickets. So then they don't get to play games the weekend. Like, you have to stick to that. And it only takes a couple times of them to realize, wow, they're serious. And then they get more serious about doing things to earn those tickets. So, all right. Any questions with that? Feeling good? Okay, so this is a video that you can watch if you type in. It doesn't work well to do video. Well, let's try it. Videos within videos. Let's see. We'll try. I don't think you'll be able to hear it.
You're on.
Good boy. Yeah. Hey, will you go get me a Coke? Go get a Coke.
Can you hear that? Okay, well, basically, he taught the dog to get him a Coke. He said, go get me a Coke. So the dog went and got him a Coke.
Get the Coke here real quick.
He's going to
How you doing?
open up the Coke.
Hold on. Hey, go shut the door.
Tells the dog, go shut the door.
So anyway, what happened?
And this is super cute because then the dog comes back. And he's like,
Okay.
you got to shut the door.
Eddie, you gotta shut the door.
The dog's like, fine, I'll shut your door. There you go, door shut. A little sassy.
Yeah, I'm just hanging
Got a
out.
little sass.
Drink
Now,
some
what's
Coke.
neat is the dog comes back and it whines a little bit.
Hold on a second. Sorry.
And he says, okay. And says, good dog. So he's giving him the praise. And that's what the dog is looking for. Now, this dog did not start out just being it didn't start out like, hi, I'm a dog who can, I'm a dog who can just go to the kitchen and get you a Coke. It started out by training the dog with called shaping. So with shaping, he trained the dog come into the kitchen, and the dog would come in the kitchen. And then he trained the dog to, whenever the dog would get near the towel hanger, he'd say, good boy, scratch the dog's head, and then give him a treat reinforcer. But then the next time he'd come to the kitchen, put his mouth on this, he wouldn't get a reinforcer. The next time when he pulls it, then you say, great job, give him a reinforcer. So you're like building up on the steps. So you would reinforce step 1 a few times, and then you'd make the dog go to step 2 before you get the reinforcer, and no reinforcer here anymore. Then step 3, no reinforcer at step 2. And then step 4, no reinforcer at step 3, till finally the dog is doing things in successions, okay? So successive approximations, behavior that are progressively closer to the target, you reinforce those behaviors. And then eventually the dog is doing the goal behavior that you want them to do. This is also something you can use when you're working with individuals who are mentally challenged or who have issues as well. Shaping works really well with kids. Shaping works really well. Like, let's say, for example, you're teaching the kid to make the bed. You don't just hand the kid a bunch of sheets and go make the bed. I mean, you've got to teach them how to do that. So you may start off by saying, hey, come help me make the bed. Can you carry the sheets in here for me? Okay, great job. Now we're going to rip this off. Thank you so much for helping me. And then you finish it out. But then the next time the expectation is, okay, let's rip this off. Now help me put this one on. So it's like you're gradually moving them up to being able to do it by themselves. All right, so schedules of reinforcement. So when you are reinforcing or doing training, you have 2 basic types. You have continuous and you have partial. Continuous reinforcement is when you reinforce every correct response. Now, this is good to get something started and to get something you want to happen started. Like for puppies, for example, every single time they sit, you give them a reinforcer. Every single time they sit, you give them a reinforcer. Till eventually, sitting is just an expectation. Sit. They don't get reinforced for it anymore. Maybe after a few times, you'll be like, good puppy, good sitting. But then you move on to now you want stay, and then you move on to other things. So eventually, they wouldn't be reinforced. Partial reinforcement is reinforcement schedule, which is not after every correct response is reinforced, but you do reinforce them after either a fixed, which is set number of responses, or variable, which is a change in the number of responses, or time that elapses. Now, the reason that it says that is because you have interval and ratio, not ration, but ratio. That's a typo. You have ratio. An interval is a schedule based on time, okay? Time like a clock, okay? That's your intervals. And then ratio is based on number of responses. For example, doing 5 math problems, or jumping 10 times, or doing the dishwasher 3 times. All right, so let's look at this. So we have fixed, which means it stays. So fixed means it's set, okay? Interval, which is again time. So fixed interval, schedule. A fixed amount of time must elapse between the previous and subsequent times that reinforcement is available. So Jenny gets a paycheck every 2 weeks. See how it's fixed because it's every 2 weeks, and it's an interval because it's time, okay? FI, fixed interval. Variable interval, this means it varies. A variable amount of time must elapse between the previous and subsequent times that reinforcement is available. So John catches a fish after waiting 2 hours. There's your key. We know it's interval because there's time there, okay? After waiting 2 hours, and then catches another fish after 1 hour. So it varies. If he was guaranteed a fish every 30 minutes, every single person would be out there right where he was, right? I get a fish every 30 minutes. That doesn't happen in the real world, okay? It could take 2 hours. It could take 5 hours. It could take 1 hour. But eventually, John is going to catch a fish, okay? So it's a variable interval schedule based on time. Fixed ratio schedule. This is a reinforcement that's provided after a fixed number of correct responses. So Jenny gets a sticker after every 5 math problems she completes. So it's fixed. Every 5 math problems she completes, she gets that sticker. So after every, she gets a sticker after every math problem she completes. So it's a fixed ratio. Variable ratio schedule. Reinforcement is provided after an indefinite number of correct responses, meaning it's not the same number every time. So John gets a sticker after he finishes 2 math problems. Then he gets a sticker after he finishes 5 math problems. Then he may get a sticker after he finishes 1 math problem. Okay? So it may be a matter of, and that's going to be a variable ratio. This works with lottery tickets too. Okay, you buy a lottery ticket. You buy a ticket. And you lose. And you buy another ticket. You buy 2 tickets this time. And you lose. Then you buy 1 ticket. And you win. Now, granted, you might only win $5, and you've already spent 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, so you made $1. Excuse me. So you made a little money, but you know, if you bought a $20 ticket and you only won $20, you just lost 20, 40, 50, 60, 70. You just lost 80. You just lost $60. Okay. So the house always wins because it works on a variable ratio schedule. This also works on a variable ratio schedule. The claw game. My daughter is so funny. She would say, "Can I play the claw game?" And I'm like, "Sure, but you know it's on a variable ratio schedule." So she grew up knowing that the claw game, it's a skill to a certain extent. You have to get it over the animal. But if you get that claw perfectly over that animal, let's say you just wrap that animal just right, if it doesn't tighten, you're not going to pick that animal up. So this tightening schedule is on a variable ratio schedule, whether or not that claw is going to go tight. Okay. And if the claw does not go tight, it will not pick up the animal. But if the claw goes tight, sometimes it doesn't matter if you don't wrap the whole animal. You can even grab it with a tag. I've seen people win animals by a tag. That's because the claw has tightened. It's a variable ratio schedule. You just never know when it's going to happen. All right. So that is operant conditioning, the Skinner's operant conditioning. So latent learning. So we talk about latent learning. This is learning that is hidden or concealed. In an experiment conducted by E.C. Tolman, it was found that rats could build a cognitive map of a maze. A cognitive map is a mental representation of the layout of one's environment. For example, I can say, somebody can say to me, hey, what's the drive to Saluda like? And I can tell you how to drive to Saluda. What's the drive to Philadelphia like? And I can tell you what the drive to Philadelphia is like. Even if I've never been there, or even if I've never, I wouldn't go driving out there right now. But I have a cognitive map. I have a mental representation of how to get there. Latent learning is when learning that occurs but is not observed in behavior until there's a reason. So I may learn how to change a tire. Okay, I've learned how to change a tire. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I just learned how to change a tire. I'm going to run and go change my tire. No, I'm going to wait until I'm actually being reinforced to change that tire, right? I'm going to wait. Tolman trained some rats to run in the maze. Food was the goal, and they were allowed to explore the mazes without food goals. Some had food goals, some did not. After 10 days, unrewarded rats were placed in the maze with food rewards. Previously unrewarded rats reached the food box as quickly as the rewarded rats only after 1 or 2 trials. So Tolman believed that the rats created a cognitive map, even though they were not motivated externally to do this. They still created this map, and then the learning remains hidden until the food now motivates them to actually solve the maze. Okay, so the last section is on observational learning. This is really super self-explanatory. It's basically acquisition of skills by observing others. One is vicariously reinforced when you see a model behaving in a way that gets reinforced. It can occur without engaging in overt responses. It's necessary that you pay attention and that practice is required to refine that acquired skill that may be latent. So mirror neurons kind of stimulate this imitating behavior. We see it in babies as well. If you smile at a baby, hi baby, the baby's going to smile back at you. It's going to mirror that behavior. So Bandura found 3 kinds of models. We have a live model, a verbal model, and a symbolic model. The live model is demonstrating the behavior in person. Verbal model does not perform the behavior, but instead explains it. And a symbolic model can be something on TV, characters, video games. These are fictional characters displaying the behavior, okay? So what we find is the live model is the most powerful model. So we tell our kids, don't cuss, but then we're like, I'm not going to cuss on this thing, but, we're like, DSF, MF, blah, 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 blah. Or we say don't cuss in school, but then our music has lots of bad language in it. So it's a lot of things we tell our kids, you need to eat healthy, and then, we're snacking on a donut. So even though we're telling them to behave in a certain way, you can say things like, well, if you want to do something like, well, that's a grown-up word. Kids can't use that word. Kids don't use those words yet because they'll get in trouble. It's a grown-up word. You have to wait till you're grown up to use that word. But the live model seemed to be the most powerful model when it comes to people mimicking behavior or vicarious reinforcement. So steps in modeling. You need to be able to pay attention. You need to be able to retain the information. You need to be able to reproduce it, and you need the motivation to reproduce it. So, for example, I can pay attention to someone all day long doing a round off, double back handspring, double tuck. Okay, I can retain the information and how to do it. But guess what? I am not able to reproduce that. I'm just not able. I can't. It's not something my body will allow me to do. It just won't. My body's like, no, thank you. So I'm not able to do it. So you have to be able to reproduce it. Another thing is, I've paid attention to my friends who have gotten PhDs. I've retained information of PhD level. I've taken PhD classes just for self-training. I could reproduce it. I absolutely could get a PhD. Sure, why not? But guess what? I got no motivation. All right. I just got no motivation. I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a book. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do a dissertation. I just don't. I'm just not motivated. Also, I don't want to spend the money. I know I could probably go out there and get one of those PhDs where it's just like, you don't even have to write a dissertation. It's just a PhD piece of paper. But I just can't do it. There's no way. Like, no way. Even PhDs that are, people say are, quote, easy, they're still hard. You still have to work for them. So kudos to the PhDs out there. But I'm just not motivated to do it. So even though I can pay attention, I can retain information, I can reproduce it, I'm not motivated. So you have to have all 4 of these to be able to follow through and do what the person is modeling. So vicarious reinforcement, there's also things called vicarious trauma. But vicarious reinforcement specifically is being motivated to imitate a behavior because you saw a model being reinforced by it. Vicarious punishment is being less motivated to imitate a model because you saw the model being punished for their behavior. So pro-social models can be used to encourage socially acceptable behaviors. This is one thing with my daughter that she needs so much more of. She doesn't have very many pro-social models, and she sees kids a lot of the time being very naughty, hitting other kids. But for each kid, you have a special rules because she's in a special needs class. And there was this one little kid who was just, he would literally just hit everybody. Like, he'd walk around just hitting people. My daughter hits someone one time, I get called because she's bigger, she's stronger. And so when I finally noticed that, I was like, guys, he's getting reinforced for this behavior. He's getting tons of attention. He's not getting any kind of punishment. If, my daughter saw him, getting a punishment for it, then maybe she would not do it as much herself. So when we finally figured out what was going on, because she doesn't hit at home, so we finally figured out what was going on, I had a little talk with the teachers and we kind of worked that out. But pro-social modeling is really important for kids with special needs, and kids in general really need pro-social models. So they can, look up to that person and say, wow, this is what this person's doing. This is really, this is helpful to me. All right. So vicarious reinforcement, again, motivated by seeing the person's behaviors being reinforced, so you're more likely to do it. Vicarious punishment, they're being punished, you're less likely to do it. And pro-social models are used to encourage socially acceptable behaviors. Aw, and that's the end. Boo. All right, well, that's the end of our lecture. Thank you guys for watching. And if you need anything, don't forget to email me or give me a buzz. Thank you so much. And I'm going to close this recording down, but then if any of you guys have questions, I'll open that up.